called it enforcement. They called it procedure. But what happened in Minneapolis looks less like law enforcement and more like a preview. A fatal ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis has become something much bigger than one incident because it exposes what happens when federal power expands faster than accountability, and what that expansion means for everyday citizens if government policy hardens even further. This isn't theory anymore. This already happened. Let's be precise. ICE agents were operating in Minneapolis as part of a federal immigration enforcement action. During that operation, a civilian, Renee Good, was shot and killed. That alone is serious, but everything that followed is what turned this into a national crisis. First, location. This did not happen in isolation. This happened near a school, in a populated civilian area, with children, staff, and parents nearby. Federal agents discharged lethal force in a space where local police normally follow strict engagement rules. ICE does not answer to the city. ICE does not answer to the mayor. ICE answers upward, to the federal government. That distinction matters. Second, control. After the shooting, federal agents locked down the scene. Local officials were not in charge. City leaders publicly admitted they were not briefed in advance of the operation. This wasn't cooperation. This was federal authority overriding local governance. And that's the first place where citizens should pay attention. Now the narrative started shifting. Officials began using careful language. Officer safety. Threat perception. Ongoing investigation. Then came a key phrase. The driver had allegedly been harassing officers. That word is doing a lot of work. Harassment is not a violent crime. Harassment does not justify lethal force. Harassment does not explain why shots were fired near a school. But the phrase serves a purpose. It reframes the victim before evidence is released. That's not justice. That's narrative control. And here's where government impact becomes unavoidable. When federal agencies control the story, control the investigation, and delay evidence, citizens lose leverage. You can't vote ICE out. You can't pressure them through city council. You can't demand answers through local oversight boards. Federal power creates distance, and distance erodes accountability. Now let's talk about Trump, not as a personality, but as a policy direction. Under Trump, ICE budgets expanded. Rules of engagement hardened. Interior enforcement increased dramatically. And Trump has already made one thing clear. If he returns to power, ICE authority will expand further, not shrink. This case shows what that expansion looks like in real life. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. This wasn't a raid at the border. This wasn't a remote detention center. This was a federal operation inside a U.S. city, affecting citizens who were not targets. If ICE can operate like this now, under existing rules, what happens when those rules are loosened? Look at what followed the shooting. Protests erupted immediately. Not ideological protests, fear-based protests. People weren't chanting slogans about immigration. They were holding signs that said, "Justice for Renee Good." That's not America. We are family. That's not about borders. That's about state power touching civilian life. Then the federal response hardened. Instead of immediate transparency, no full body cam release, no independent investigation announced, no joint federal city briefing. Instead, ICE cited jurisdiction and internal review. This is the model. Federal agency investigates itself. Federal agency controls timing. Federal agency controls narrative. And citizens wait. Now ask yourself this. If this can happen during an ICE operation, what happens during protests? During strikes? During unrest? During emergency enforcement? Federal authority doesn't shrink in chaos. It expands. And that expansion rarely walks itself back. Former Governor Jesse Ventura said it plainly. This looks like a country losing internal restraint, not because of citizens, but because of unchecked enforcement power. You don't need to agree with him politically to understand the warning. When armed agents answer only upward, citizens become collateral risk. This is why the Trump angle matters. Trump doesn't talk about reforming ICE. He talks about unleashing it. More raids, more authority, less local interference, faster action. This case shows what faster action looks like when things go wrong. Let's ground this in facts, not emotion. A civilian is dead. Federal agents fired the shots. The incident happened near a school. Evidence release is delayed. Local officials were sidelined. Federal review controls the outcome. That's not speculation. That's documented reality. Here's the real impact on citizens. It means your city laws may not protect